Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Get Set Up's special event, Tips from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau Office for Older Americans with Lisa Schifferle and Kate Kramer. My name is Kevin Miller. I am a guide at Get Set Up, and I will be your host today. As a community of active adults who are looking to stay informed, Get Set Up is thrilled to have Lisa and Kate with us today, teaching us about financial safety. Before we get started, let me cover a few housekeeping items with you. For those of you tuning in live through our Get Set Up Zoom class, please remember to keep yourself muted to help give us all a good experience. And during the heart of the workshop, please keep your camera on so we can see your smiling face. And if you're comfortable, you leave it on so that we can see you and enjoy the experience together. We may also capture some images along the way to share in the future. If you have a clarifying question or comment while Lisa or Kate are presenting, please let us know in the chat, and we will do our best to call them to our speakers' attention in real time. We'll also leave some time at the end of our time together for questions and answers with Lisa and Kate. So feel free to put those questions in chat. For those of you joining our community live stream or on Get Set Up TV, Facebook, Live, or YouTube, you are welcome to enter your questions into chat there. We will do our best to transfer those questions over to our live platform. And now let me introduce to you our special guest today. Lisa Weintraub Schifferle is Senior Policy Analyst in the CFPB's Office for Older Americans. She leads the Managing Someone Else's Money program and supports the office's work to combat elder financial exploitation. Her career in consumer protection spans more than 20 years. Before working with CFPB, she worked as an attorney at the Federal Trade Commission, where she led trainings on scam prevention, served as the FTC's identity theft coordinator, and litigated fraud and data security cases. Before that, she was at the Maryland Legal Aid Bureau, where she represented low-income clients in consumer, bankruptcy, housing, public benefits, and employee cases. Kate Kramer is the policy analyst with the Office for Older Americans at the Consumer Financial Business Bureau. She focuses her work in the areas of age-friendly banking, financial technology, elder exploitation, financial exploitation, and protecting people living in assisted living communities and nursing homes from financial abuse. Before joining the CFPB, Mrs. Kramer was the project director of the Elder Rights Center at the Area Agency on Aging in Palm Beach, Treasure Coast. Before that, she worked as a legal service attorney with a focus on family law, guardianship, bankruptcy, and consumer law. We are so excited to have them sharing with us today, and we look forward to what they have to share and encourage us. Lisa and Kate, welcome to Get Set Up. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Kevin, and thanks to Get Set Up for inviting us here today to talk about financial protection for older adults and how the CFPB can help. My name is Lisa Schifferle, and I'm here with my colleague, Kate Kramer. We both work in the Office for Older Americans at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and we're really excited to be here today to talk with you about financial protection for older adults and share some CFPB resources. As you might know, May is Older Americans Month, and the theme this year for Older Americans Month is Communities of Strength. So it's based on the idea that older adults have built resilience and strength over their lives, and during Older Americans Month, we celebrate that strength, with a special emphasis on the power of connection and engagement in building strong communities. So in this presentation, we're going to share some CFPB resources that we hope will help you make your community stronger. We'll talk about some of the financial protection issues facing older adults and share tools you can use to address them. So, and as Kevin said, we'll also allow some time at the end for your questions. Next slide, please. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, in case you're not familiar with us. We are a US federal government consumer protection agency, which was designed to help make sure banks and lenders treat you fairly. And in the Office for Older Americans, where Kate and I work, our office engages in research, policy, and educational initiatives to help protect older consumers from financial harm. We also create resources to help older people make sound financial decisions as they grow older. We offer a variety of resources that we're going to discuss today that you can view online, download, or order in bulk, all for free. And you can get them at Consumerfinance.gov older Americans. Now, before we begin, I'll just give a brief disclaimer, which is that anything we say during this presentation is our own opinion and not necessarily the opinion of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So on the next slide, I want to start talking to you about some of the resources and some of the financial protection issues facing older adults. Next slide, please. Let's start by talking about scams. During the COVID pandemic, scams are on the rise, and that includes COVID-specific scams like vaccine scams or Medicare imposters, as well as scams that have been around for a long time, like tech support scams and romance scams. And we know that research shows that if you can spot scams, then you're far less likely to lose money to them. So that's why we've created Money Smart for older adults. It helps you recognize and prevent scams. It's an awareness program that we developed with the FDIC, and it focuses on preventing elder financial exploitation and scams. It offers over 2 hours of content on particular scams and types of theft targeting older people. It covers scams like imposter scams, tech support scams, investment scams, and a lot more. And you can either use parts of the guide focusing on a specific scam that maybe you're seeing in your community, or all of it if you want to get more knowledge about or share more knowledge about a whole variety of scams. Next slide, please. We provide an instructor guide that scripts a presentation. We also have a slide deck and a participant resource guide. And the resource guides for older adults and their caregivers, one nice thing about it is it's very readable in 14-point font. And all the guides are available to order at Consumerfinance.gov/order. So you can use these to present the program for older adults in your community, or you can just order copies of the resource guide to hand out or to review one-on-one with a friend or family member to learn and discuss more about scams. So next, I'm going to hand it over to Kate to talk about some more fraud prevention tools that we offer. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Lisa. So CFPB's fraud prevention handouts are a really simple and engaging way to empower people to protect themselves from scams. We originally designed these to be used by meal delivery programs, but we've seen them being used by lots of different people and organizations in a variety of ways. You can order the free placemats, posters, bookmarks, and table tents in English or Spanish, and you can display them at your local library, banks, community centers, faith-based organizations, legal aid offices, or anywhere that you might engage with. These are great to order, and you can bring them to events or gatherings or group meals to educate the people around you about some of these common scams. They all share important information about scams, and many of them have word games, crossword puzzles, and other types of interactive activities to make it more interesting to learn these key concepts that we're trying to share. And during the pandemic, we created downloadable versions as well of these, which are easy to print or to share online. And they have a lot of topics like romance scams, which is one type of scam that we have seen growing very quickly during the pandemic. Back in September for Disaster Preparedness Month, we had information about scams that happened during natural disasters or health emergencies. And in October, we created one with cybersecurity tips to help people play it safe online. There are all types of different topics covered in these different fraud prevention materials. Next slide, please. This is one really innovative program we have. It's called our Elder Fraud Prevention and Response Networks program. I know that's a bit of a mouthful, so let's start with the basics. What are networks? Well, for the purposes of our program, a network is, as you see here, a collaboration effort or partnership that works together to detect, prevent, or respond to elder financial abuse. This wouldn't be a one-time meeting or event, but it would be a continued partnership among the members of the network. The problem of financial abuse really requires a community response. There are so many different scams and exploitation, and financial exploitation impacts a lot of different community stakeholders, from law enforcement to long-term care communities, to financial institutions, to social service organizations, in addition to the people who are experiencing these types of things. Our office studied the benefits of community networks nationwide, And we learned quite a lot about how they function, who is involved in them, and what kind of services they are providing in the communities. We then started an outreach initiative to help different communities in different states to build new networks or to help existing networks to grow or to enhance their impact. And as a result of that work, we developed a model for how to identify potential networks, how to coordinate with key stakeholders and get the right people into the room, how to facilitate meetings, and how to build support for the network. And in 2019, we released a report about this model. Next slide, please. Throughout the several years that we were working with these networks, people shared with us that they would really like detailed instruction to help them launch networks. The network members, like law enforcement officers and financial institution staff, told us, look, we're already working busy full-time jobs and we could use some ready-made resources so that we can plan and host a network. They also said that they needed resources and guidance to keep building the network after that initial meeting. So to meet that need, we released our network development guide in 2020, which has resources for planning a network retreat, hosting that retreat, reconvening and establishing the network, expanding the network's capabilities, and tons of other resources. Here you can see the 4 main stages of network growth that we cover in the guide. And for each stage, we have different types of information and resources like discussion guides, templates, meeting facilitation guide. We have a ton of interactive group exercises and a lot more to help people through that process of starting or expanding a network. So if you're interested in joining a network in your area, please check out our network development guide at the link you see here on this page. Next slide, please. We also have a guide for assisted living communities and nursing homes that can help people to identify warning signs that might indicate financial abuse. And other types of professionals and people who live in assisted living communities and nursing homes, and family and friends who might be helping someone who lives in an assisted living community or nursing home can also take a look at this guide to learn about preventing financial exploitation and scams. So if you or someone that you know and love are living in a long-term care community, it might be interesting for you to take a look at this guide. It has information about what is financial exploitation, understanding the laws that might apply, warning signs and red flags, information about fraud and scams that target older people, and tons of resources for the communities, the people who are living in the communities, and their family and friends. And you can find these publications on our website at Consumerfinance.gov/older-Americans, which I put into the chat a bit earlier. Next slide, please. Planning for retirement is a really cool tool. It's interactive, and we offer it to help you make an informed decision about when to claim your Social Security benefits. We created this with support from the Social Security Administration, which makes sense. The tool will give a rough estimate of what your monthly benefit might be, and it also shows how your monthly benefit changes depending on the age at which you decide to start collecting your benefits. So it can give you a good sense of the dollar amount that you might be getting in different time frames and situations. It also has claiming tips that are relevant for your specific situation. And it's optimized so you can use it on your mobile device, your smartphone or tablet in addition to your computer. And again, this is another resource we have that's available in both English and Spanish. Next slide, please, and I'll turn it back to Lisa.
Thanks, Kate. So I'm going to talk a bit about financial caregiving. And we know that right now, millions of Americans are managing money or property for a loved one who's unable to do so. And that's what we mean by financial caregiving. A lot of people don't necessarily think of themselves as financial caregivers. They just know they're helping out a friend or family member or loved one. But with the coronavirus pandemic, even more of us may be called upon to act as financial caregivers. You may be helping a loved one with their finances now, or maybe you're planning ahead in case you're unable to manage your finances in the future. Today, I'm going to talk about some guides that are available to help you with that financial caregiving journey. Next slide, please. The CFPB has 4 guides, which we call our Managing Someone Else's Money Guides, and they're designed to help family members and friends who are financial caregivers. They're available at Consumerfinance.gov/MSEM. And what they go over is they help you understand your duties. They provide tips and resources to help you protect, invest, and manage money for someone else. They also have information on identifying benefits that the care recipient might be eligible for, like disability, Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefits, and more. And the guides describe warning signs of financial exploitation and how to watch out for some of those scams that we talked about earlier. And then finally, the guides provide more information on where to get more help. And we worked on these guides closely with the American Bar Association, Commission on Law and Aging, so that you can know that the advice here is very solid. We have guides for 4 types of financial caregivers. You'll see the different colors represent the different financial caregivers. There's one for agents under power of attorney, one for guardians, one for trustees, and one for government benefits fiduciaries. And I'll explain a little bit more about each of these in case you don't know what they are. Next slide, please. So first, let's talk about power of attorney. And then we have a whole guide on this to tell you more, but basically power of attorney is a legal document where someone who we call the principal gives someone else who you call the agent legal authority to make decisions about their money or property. And often people make powers of attorney so someone else can handle their money if they become sick or injured and can no longer manage their own finances. In some states, this is referred to as a durable power of attorney. I imagine a lot of you on this session already have powers of attorney in place just in case you need them in the future. If not, let me tell you a little bit about why to consider getting a power of attorney. They really give you control to name who you want to manage your finances. And they also make things easier for your loved ones if you do become unable to manage your finances in the future. So basically you retain control until you're no longer able to. And to give you an example, an older family member of mine last summer had to go into the hospital, and we found out that he had a healthcare power of attorney in place, but did not have a financial power of attorney. So that's another thing this guide talks about, is to make sure you realize that there are 2 separate documents, and one, the healthcare power of attorney lets someone decide healthcare decisions, and the financial one lets them decide financial decisions. So it's good to make sure that you have both, and this guide will walk you through what you need to know if you're acting as power of attorney, and it's also a good thing to read if you don't have a power of attorney and want to understand more. Now on the next slide, I'll talk about one of the other guides we have and a different type of financial caregiver, and that's government fiduciaries. It depends on what government agency in terms of what it's called. If we're talking about Social Security Administration and Social Security benefits, they call it a representative payee. If you're talking about the VA and VA benefits, they call it a VA fiduciary. But either way, it's basically when a government agency appoints someone to manage those government benefits for a person who needs help managing them. The important thing to know about this type of financial caregiver, and the guide goes over this, is that if you're appointed as a caregiver for someone under one of these roles, it only applies to their government benefits. It does not apply to any other property or money that they have. If you want to be able to manage that, then you need a power of attorney or some other legal authority in place. So this is also a good tool to bring along with you if you are somebody's government fiduciary. You can bring this along to help explain what the government fiduciary is. Now, next, let's talk about guardians of property on the next slide, please. And in some states, these are called conservators, but it's basically the same thing. This is someone who the court names to manage money or property for someone else who the court has found can't manage it alone. So if you don't have a power of attorney in place and something happens to you, then your family may need to go get guardianship in order to take care of your legal affairs. To give you an example here, my grandmother, when she was in 70s, was trying to turn left and a truck hit her, and she was immediately in a coma for weeks. And because she had no power of attorney, we had to go get guardianship for her, which ended up working out fine, but it was a lot more work because there was a court involved. There are doctors that have to come into the hospital and sit there to confirm that she can't make decisions. And it's a much more long, involved process. So I just tell that story to give people an idea of the importance of power of attorney and how, you know, you're really doing your family a favor too if you get these documents in order if you don't have them already. So that's basically a guardian, and a guardian can be a guardian of the person or of the property. And kind of like power of attorney, the guardian of the person can make healthcare and other personal decisions. So that's a bit about guardian of the property, and the guide has a lot more. When we move on to talk about the trustee and the trustee guide, basically, next slide, please. The last guide we have is about trustees, and there are different types of trustees. Some are done in court and some are done through a legal document. Our guide refers to the types of trustees that are established through a legal document. And the thing to know about a trust is that it gives someone legal authority to make decisions about money or property in that trust if they can't make those decisions because they're sick or injured. So the trust also specifies who gets the money in the trust after the person passes away. So one nice thing about the trust is you can specify that just certain things go into it. So you could say, my car is in trust to my daughter and my house is in trust to my son, or however you want to do it. It gives you some more control in that way. But again, there's a lot more in that trustee guide. And on the next slide, I want to talk to you about another publication that we have that kind of helps you earlier in the process. We call it Planning for Diminished Capacity and Illness. And at the CFPB, we worked with our federal partners at the Securities and Exchange Commission to come up with this consumer advisory and investor bulletin. And it's basically about planning for the future when you might not be able to manage your money and property. It's sometimes referred to as diminished capacity, and has advice on planning for your financial future, getting your documents in order, and watching out for financial exploitation. So this could be a good place to start if you're wondering about what tools to use, and then move on to those managing someone else's money guides for more details. I also want to tell you on the next slide, please, about a brand new tool that we're actually officially releasing next week. So you're the first people to publicly hear about it. It is available on our website now, so you can find it at Consumerfinance.gov/MSEM. It is part of our Managing Someone Else's Money series, and it's called Considering a Financial Caregiver, Know Your Options. And basically what we heard from people about our guides is that our guides are great, but they are very involved and they're designed more for later in the process once you are a power of attorney or guardian. And people wanted help earlier on when they're trying to figure out what are my options and what should I think about. So this is a very short publication. It's a bifold, so just 4 pages back and front, and it goes to informal caregivers, things like just having a conversation with a loved one about, what are your finances, so they know if they need to step in, or trusted contact people, so that if you have a brokerage account, you can name someone who's called a trusted contact person that financial institution can notify if they suspect elder financial exploitation. And then it also talks about convenience accounts, so that if you need someone to actually go so far as to make deposits and withdrawals for you, you might want to consider the convenience account. And then on the next page, which you don't see here, it also talks about formal caregivers, and it gives you information about how to choose a financial caregiver. It goes over a list of questions you may want to consider when you're thinking about who is the person you want to name as a financial caregiver, and do you trust them? Can you talk to them about your wishes? Will they manage your property well? Will they keep good records? Things like that. So again, you can find this at Consumerfinance.gov/MSEM. So we hope you will check these out as you consider your own financial caregiving needs and those of your loved ones. So now I'll hand it over to Kate to talk about some of our reverse mortgage resources.
Thanks, Lisa. Next slide, please. Thanks. So the CFPB has 2 types of resources related to reverse mortgages. One category are our pre-origination resources, which means before a reverse mortgage loan is taken out. So the first 3 guides that you see here on this slide are for older homeowners who are considering a reverse mortgage but don't have one yet. The focus is to help people understand what is a reverse mortgage and how does it work. Then the second category we have are post-origination, which means after the loan has been taken out. These guides are for people who already have a reverse mortgage, so the focus is on how that homeowner can fulfill their ongoing responsibilities under the loan, and also where they can find help if they have problems. Next slide, please. Now, this slide shows a little bit more about these resources, and I'll talk about each of them in more detail in just a moment. But you can see here we have Considering a Reverse Mortgage, a Reverse Mortgage Discussion Guide, Know Your Rights and Responsibilities, and a Guide for Natural Disasters. Next slide, please. The first of these is our Considering a Reverse Mortgage Guide. This is a short, clear, and concise guide about what a reverse mortgage is and how it works. It's just a 2-page document, and it just really hits the basics of reverse mortgages, and it's in plain language to help to get rid of misconceptions and to build understanding about this financial product. I think of this as a really helpful handout to understand just the key concepts. Next slide, please. Our Reverse Mortgage Discussion Guide was released in 2017, and this is intended to be a more in-depth guide if you're considering a reverse mortgage. It's a tool that housing counselors, legal services attorneys, and financial planners can use to walk people through the important considerations about reverse mortgages. So if you're working with an attorney or a financial planner or a housing counselor, you could bring this guide to a meeting and ask if it's possible for you to review the guide together. And HUD housing counselors often use this for a pre-meeting or a follow-up tool for their housing counseling sessions. So you may have seen this if you've met with a HUD housing counselor. This guide is particularly useful, I think, during the pandemic for telephone or video counseling, because even if you're not physically in the same room with whoever professional is helping you, you have something that you can both look at and follow along with together. Next slide, please. Our brand new Reverse Mortgage Rights and Responsibilities Guide. This was just released in March 2021, and it was over 2 years in the making. We created this guide for people who already have a reverse mortgage. And we heard from legal services attorneys that this would be a helpful resource because they were seeing lots of people who are having trouble understanding what their responsibilities are related to their reverse mortgage on an ongoing basis. And this guide explains those ongoing obligations under the loan so that hopefully people will be better able to take any steps that are needed to avoid going into default with their loan. And the guide also discusses what to do if you have a reverse mortgage and you do receive a notice of default. There's information in the guide about where you can get help with various problems related to your reverse mortgage and tons of other important information for someone who has the reverse mortgage already. Next slide, please. We also have a short guide that talks about how to handle your reverse mortgage after a natural disaster. We created this because we heard from legal services attorneys in Puerto Rico about the various problems that people were having after Hurricane Maria. So if you already have a reverse mortgage, this guide explains how you can handle your ongoing responsibilities related to the loan after a natural disaster. For example, things like the requirement to occupy the home or to keep the home in good repair. Those things would obviously be very challenging if a natural disaster has affected your home. So this can help walk you through what your next steps are and how to meet those responsibilities. Many of the topics that we cover in this guide might also apply to you if you've experienced some kind of a change in your financial situation due to the current natural disaster of the coronavirus pandemic. So there may be some help for you there as well. Next slide, please. All of these resources we just looked at, as well as some others, are on our reverse mortgages landing page, which you can see here. It's Consumerfinance.gov/reverse mortgage. This page also has a short video. It's just 2 minutes long, and it explains reverse mortgages in a quick and simple way. There are commonly asked questions about reverse mortgages and a glossary of common terms, a lot of which may not be too familiar to most of us because we're not using them on a daily basis. So it's helpful to know what terms you might hear as you're talking to different people about your reverse mortgage. And you can download all of our resources for free at this page, or you can order print versions of our reverse mortgage guides in bulk or a single copy if you like for yourself. Next slide, please, and I'll turn it back over to Lisa.
Thanks, Kate. And as Kate mentioned, one thing that's at the forefront of most of our minds right now is the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have a lot of resources related to that as well. Next slide, please. We know that the pandemic has affected people's health, but also their finances. And even if it hasn't affected your finances, maybe it's affected the finances of your adult children or grandchildren. We hear more and more about older people who are dipping into their retirement savings to help adult children. So this may be a good tool to pass on to other people in your life as well. And what we've done here is we've created a central hub on Consumerfinance.gov/coronavirus, and it has resources to help people protect and manage their finances during the pandemic. These resources are available in English and Spanish, as well as Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, and Tagalog. And some of the topics include information about how you can financially protect yourself, including credit and debt management during the pandemic, student loan repayment, mortgage relief options, scam prevention, and online and mobile banking tips. So there's also information for financial caregivers, meaning people who manage someone's money or property, like we talked about before. The site has short videos too, and there's some really good, easy to follow videos that will give you tips on things, especially if you know someone who's behind on their mortgage or their rent. And on the next slide, I want to talk a little bit more about that because we have created a special subsite called Consumerfinance.gov/housing, which helps people who are struggling to pay their mortgage or rent during the pandemic. We launched this site along with other government agencies, including Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Federal Home Finance Agency. So it's a one-stop shop for people to find accurate information about housing relief options during the pandemic. There are a couple things I just want to bring to your mind in case you don't know about them that you'll find more about on this site. First, there is a foreclosure moratoria, meaning people cannot foreclose on you if your loan is backed by certain federally backed mortgage companies. And that is, you can't be foreclosed on until after June 30th, but you can get more details on our website about how to find out if your loan is covered or not by that foreclosure moratoria. Second, there's what's called forbearance, which is basically if you're having financial hardship due to the pandemic, you have a right to request what's called a forbearance. And that's when your mortgage lender allows you to either pause your payments or pay a lower payment until you're able to make the regular payments again. So again, if you want this type of forbearance, you should request it as soon as possible and check out the website for more information about whether you're in the type of loan that qualifies for it. And contact your loan servicer right away to ask them about what options there are if you are behind on your mortgage. Also for renters, there was until yesterday a CDC order in effect that paused all evictions through June 30th, and that is under litigation now and dispute. So check our housing resource for the most up-to-date guidance on what's going on there, and also check with your state or locality if you are behind on your rent and worried about eviction, because there are some state laws that may protect you even while the federal protections are in flux or under dispute. Now on the next slide, I want to tell you about some other coronavirus resources we have specifically for older adults. We've included tips for financial caregivers if you're unable to be with someone whose money you help manage. We go over things like using video chat or phone, and tell about some of the guides that we've talked about today, like managing someone else's money, Money Smart for older adults, and the nursing home guide that Kate talked about. We also have online and mobile banking tips for people who are new to online banking. We know that this can allow people to handle their finances from their own home, which is important during the pandemic. So if you want to get into online banking and are not sure how to, I encourage you to check out these tips for more information on how to do that. And finally, we have information on planning your finances for an uncertain future. And it has a quiz that you can look at and have your partner do as well if you have a partner, to see if you're both able to handle the finances if something happens to one of you. So now I will turn it over to Kate for some ideas on how to use our resources, and then we'll have some time to answer your questions.
Thanks, Lisa. Before we wrap up our presentation today, let's just talk briefly about some ways that you might be able to use the resources that you learned about today. Next slide, please. Our hope is that you'll take these resources and use them in your communities to help build the communities of strength that Lisa mentioned during Older Americans Month in the month of May, as well as throughout the year. So here are a few ways that you can use them. It could be as simple as ordering some of our publications for yourself to continue educating yourself about these issues. Or you could order a few extra copies to share with friends and family, or a larger quantity in bulk to hand out at a community event or a local community center, senior center, perhaps your church, synagogue, mosque, or a local library. You can also use our network's resources to start or to expand an elder fraud prevention and response network in your community. Next slide, please. If you want to become even more active on these topics, or perhaps you're a professional who works in this field, please consider using our Money Smart for Older Adults program to educate people in your community about common scams. You can even train other people how to present this curriculum using the PowerPoint instructor guide and all of the other resources. Or you can use our other free resources in your outreach to help build connections, to reduce isolation, and strengthen your community. Working together, all of us can help to create the strong communities for older adults throughout the country that we're striving to achieve during Older Americans Month and throughout the year. Next slide, please. To find all of the different resources that we've covered today, please visit our website, Consumerfinance.gov/older-Americans. You can also join our mailing list through the Office for Older Americans, and we'll send out occasional alerts and updates and information about new resources. I want to thank you all again very much for your time and attention today. And thank you again as well to Get Set Up for inviting us to speak on today's webinar. I saw some questions popping into the chat box, so let's turn to that and see if there are some that we might be able to answer. And please feel free to type additional questions in as well if you have any. We're happy to answer them. Or if you'd just like to share experiences that you have or comments you have, we'd love to see those too.
Good. Thank you, Kate and Lisa. We do have a few questions. Let me serve up some of these. Thank you for putting those in. And as Kate said, feel free to keep putting questions and comments. We'll answer them as long as we have time. As it relates to the power of attorney and having let's say you have a healthcare, one of the questions was if somebody has a healthcare power of attorney, is it important that they give that to the hospital so that they know that's in place? How do you, it's one thing to have it, but people need to know you have it too. How do you advise them to use that?
Right, that's a great idea. If you do have a doctor who you see regularly or a hospital that you visit regularly, it would not be a bad idea to put it on file with them. It's also important to make sure that whoever you have given the power of attorney to knows about it and has a copy of it. So if they have to rush to the hospital or the doctor and make a healthcare decision, they have a copy of it they can bring with you, because you don't necessarily know that the hospital or doctor is going to find the copy that you gave them in the
Right.
emergency situation. So, I mean, I think it's great to cover your bases and do both. And similarly with a financial power of attorney, give it to the person you've named. And if you have any accountants or financial professionals you work with regularly, you may want to give them a copy as well.
Right. I think that's the follow through part of it, right? You need to get prepared, but then you need to let important people know that you've been prepared because they don't know you have that in place until you tell them. So that's a good example there. As we switch over to kind of the living trust and wills and the relationship between those, a couple questions there. Do they need both? And can you speak a minute about the relationship between a trust and a will? I mean, in a sense, one of my understandings was, and maybe I'm wrong, you can correct me, that the trust kind of trumps the will in a sense, like whatever's in the trust would override whatever's in the will. Is that true or no?
Well, the trust does carry on after death, unlike a power of attorney that, you know, once you pass away, that person's authority ends. But in terms of whether you also need a will or not, you may also need a will depending what you put in the trust. So the best thing to do is to get advice from an elder law attorney and a trust and estates attorney about your particular situation.
And it may vary from state to state even, probably, right? I mean, there's laws that vary. Yeah, that's definitely a legal question that a legal person should but there's a place for both of them, and they both kind of have their place. And so I think the question was, do you need both?
You may. I mean,
need
it's
to.
kind of a
Yeah.
heady answer, but yes,
Right,
it may. It's gonna depend, and you really shouldn't make any of these decisions without the help of a attorney who's barred in the state that you live in.
that you're in. Right. Good. Great advice. As far as reverse mortgages go, do these only apply to freestanding, or could it apply to like a co-op apartment as well?
That's a great question. So reverse mortgages are not limited to like a single family detached home. For example, you could get a reverse mortgage on a condominium if you own it, as long as it's your principal residence. And just a caveat, I am not our office's expert on reverse mortgages, but to my understanding, the HUD requirements for reverse mortgage eligibility do not include co-op apartments because that loan isn't secured by real property. But there could be other ways that you could draw equity out of your co-op property. Perhaps your co-op would allow you to get a home equity line of credit or some other method, and that also depends on where you live. So that'd be a really good question for a local attorney who's more familiar with your state's housing laws.
Yes. Yes. And then what if you've paid off your house? I mean, do you have to have an active mortgage, or can you use this reverse mortgage idea on something that's paid off?
Yeah, so if you have paid off your home, you can certainly take out a reverse mortgage. That's a way that you can draw some equity out of your property if you need to use it to live on, or to pay other types of bills that you may have. So that's actually a really common thing that people will do, is they'll take out a reverse mortgage loan in order to access some of that money that they've built in equity in their home.
Right. Is there ever, I mean, every case is different, and everybody should look at their own specific situation and get advice and counsel, get your resources, talk to the officials, all of that. And that's for sure. But you would say that reverse mortgages may be a good thing. They're not always a bad thing. I mean, it's maybe not for everybody, but there's a plus side to it that they could consider, and your resources would kind of help them with that.
Absolutely. And that's a big part of why we created our reverse mortgage discussion guide, because it is a very individual choice, and you can look through the pros and cons given your own situation, and a housing counselor or an attorney can really be helpful in helping you think through that process to decide whether a reverse mortgage is appropriate for you, or whether that's something that you want to pursue.
Right. Very good. Someone just asked, what's the best place to report home improvement loan scams? Do you get into advising as far as where to report things if they find something, or they see something that's happening either to themselves or somebody else, how they report that?
Sure. Well, you can report any sort of loan related scam to the CFPB at Consumerfinance.gov/complaint, anything related to financial products or services. You also may want to report them to your state attorney general, or if you have a local consumer protection agency, those often can be good places to report as well.
Okay, good.
And many types of scams as well can be reported to the Federal Trade Commission. They will accept complaints about many different types of scams. So that's a great place to start as well.
All right, got another question came in. If parents have a joint bank account and one spouse dies before the other spouse needs to file legal documents, or if that spouse owes bills, is the living spouse responsible for them? These are some end of life things that are real. So I think it's a scenario. There's a surviving spouse, but are they responsible for kind of the debts of the deceased spouse? That's kind of what I'm interpreting.
Yes, that's a very good question. We're actually in the process of working on a product on exactly these issues that we call our Surviving Spouses Project. So look for about a year from now, hopefully, a lot more guidance in terms of surviving spouses and what your responsibilities are. I mean, one good place to start is that tool that I mentioned before, where you and a spouse can go over and see who knows what about the finances, to make sure you are sure that you both know, what the finances are and what needs to be paid if the other person passes away. But whether you're going to be responsible for that debt after someone passes away is going to depend to a certain extent on how it was titled, if it was a joint account or just in that one person's name.
Right. Yeah, I've gone through this with my family a little bit recently, and I see it as like three stages. There's stuff you can do if you're married, if you're while you're both alive. There's that stage, and a lot of what you're sharing is like kind of get all that stuff together while you're both alive, and you can make the decisions when with your sound mind and everything else. That's a really important stage. And then there's the stage if one of the spouses passes away, that changes a lot of things. I mean, things are different then, and this kind of question plays into that place, which is an important part. And a good lawyer, a good trust, and all of that, a goodwill will help. All the tools you've shared will help prepare for that scenario. And then when both the spouses are deceased, that's the third stage of like, okay, now what? How do you execute the will? How do you do those kind of things? And thinking through that. So there's a lot there, and those three different stages are really distinctly different and require strategic strategies to be able to do that. And I think all of your resources address all of that, but I like to simplify things down in my head. Like those three things are a good way to kind of think about. It's not just do one thing and it covers all of it. Things change when those stages shift really along there. Good.
Absolutely, yes.
What else? Well, these links in the class, yeah, we'll share all the notes and the links with you when we send out notes after. If you've registered for the class, we'll have your email and be able to send that on to you. That's something we do at Get Set Up. We want to share this information as much as easily as possible with you. Yeah, there's some lawyers that will do some pro bono work out there as well, right? For seniors, and that's available. So don't let the cost of an attorney or a lawyer stop you from taking these steps. There are organizations and pro bono lawyers that will do this, help you, at least advise with you on this. So look for those.
Yeah, and I'll put a link in.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'll put a link in the chat to the Elder Care Locator, which is a great way to find your local legal aid organization, your local area agency on aging, and all types of other aging service providers that are in your area. I'll pop that in now.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great resource. And I was just going to reiterate what Kate and Kevin both said, which is to reach out to your local legal services office. Both Kate and I were legal services attorneys before coming to the CFPB, and there is a lot that legal services organizations can do for free for older adults. So reach out. If they can't help you, then they should be able to refer you to someone who can.
Right. Yeah, Matt, one of the things you've kind of kept repeating, which I think is great, not only do you have resources, but there are a lot of resources out there. And what's frustrating so often is people don't know about them, and how do they find them? How do they get to them? So I think, I'm here and encourage people to be persistent and ask questions and find people that can help them, because there are a lot of resources out there, and it's a shame that people aren't aware of all of them. So thank you for reminding us of that for sure. Any other questions anybody might have? Any other questions in chat? Somebody said,
my apology. I thought class was at 10 o'clock. I just joined and now I'm already late. So I guess I'll catch up next time.
Okay. All right. Jay Cherie, thanks. Yes. We'll have a recording of this as well. You can also get that.
And if you can send me the link, I'll appreciate it.
Yes. Yeah. If you're registered, we'll be able to send that to you for sure.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, well, we're kind of winding down here. If there's no other questions, here's another one. Would the report fraud website be a good resource for reporting the daily emails related to phishing? So email spam and scams there.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly the place to report that type of scam.
Right, yeah. I mean, there's just so many ways they come at us with scams and stuff, right? I mean, your phone, text messaging now, even get text messaging phishing going on, email, right? All of that is out there.
I get multiple calls a day telling me my warranty is expiring. I don't know what warranty. It's very irritating.
Yeah.
That's what I get a lot too. I'm like, why are they just beating me up about this? That's great. Yes. Okay. One thing we want to do before we wrap up is take a group photo of Lisa and Kate and all of our attendees. So if you're willing to have your nice face on the screen, we want to take a quick shot of that. Lots of great faces. You guys all look great. I always tell people when I teach, even if you have a bad hair day, that's fine. We're not here to judge. We're here to learn. So you guys look good. These are all little pictures of us and everybody looks great. Your smile is what your greatest asset is anyway. So if you can smile here, I think Natalie's going to take the picture. and do this. Are we all set with that? All right, good. All right, a few more things before you go. Again, thank you, Lisa and Kate. It's been wonderful having you here today and learning all about the financial safety for older adults. If you want to continue learning, we put those links in the chat, as well as emails we'll send out to you if we have you registered. Thank you for our audience, everybody that signed up and everybody that sat in the front row of class, as well as those in our live streaming communities. If you want a recording of this event, you can email our support team at help@getsetup.io. We'll put that in the chat as well. That's how we do for all of our classes. If you're new to Get Set Up, we hope you've gotten a taste for the type of things we do. These were special guests, but in addition to special guests, we have over 300 classes online that are live. A lot of learning is available, but it's recorded. Ours is live, and so you get to interact like this with real instructors, real guides, with real topics. So our classes are designed for older adults, taught by older adults. The classes are all free, and we work with local governments and communities, Medicare organizations who support their members with these free classes. We invite
Thank you.
Yes, we invite you to invite other people to join us. We want to grow our community and let this great secret of Get Set Up be well known all over the world. We're in many countries as well, and not just in the US. If you also are interested in some financial planning classes, we have those at Get Set Up. If you like this event, we have other ones for you as well. You can check out these on our website, getsetup.org. And you said, like I said, we will send out an email after the event with follow-up links, notes, and ways to connect with us in the future. We look forward to seeing you in future Get Set Up classes. Thank you again for your time. Thank you for our guests. I hope you all have a great day. Hope to see you again in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so
everyone.
much. Thanks for all the great
Thank you.
questions.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good information.